Now, in the meantime, a totally separate group has claimed responsibility for Sunday's Neiman Marcus attack.
It's a group that's on the radical fringe of the animal rights movement. They're hailed by heroes as heroes by some, and they're regarded as terrorists by others. ABC 7 News I-Team reporter Dan Noyes has been following their tracks, and he's here to tell us more about the group.
Well, Jessica and Dan, the Bay Area is known for groups that hold protests and news conference on a number of issues, including animal rights. But there is one group that does its work in the dead of night, with crowbars, fire bombs, and video cameras. And they've given us some of their secret tapes. 3 letters send fear into the hearts of scientists who perform experiments on animals, into the hearts of those who produce the food we eat and the clothes some of us wear. ALF. The Animal Liberation Front is the most radical animal rights group, a secret underground society that's been raiding laboratories, fur farms, and slaughterhouses, freeing animals and torching cars and buildings over the past 20 years. Now the group is apparently stepping up its raids on the Bay Area. The target this past Sunday, the Neiman Marcus in San Francisco that sells fur coats, windows and display cases smashed, $100,000 damage, the ALF signature left behind.
These are, we might say, calling cards that were left before.
Simon Delacruz has had the ALF on his mind for more than a year now. Someone has been leaving threatening notes and putting locks on the gates at his chicken processing plant, Fulton Valley Farms near Santa Rosa. And it's gotten worse.
They had a bomb placed in this area here. They draped this with flammable liquid, paper saturated in flammable liquid, which would ignite here and start the fire through here and burn the office.
Just before this past Christmas, someone planted fire bombs throughout the building. They didn't go off. Still, the incident shook some of the workers to the core.
As the employees arrived at the plant and they found out about having bombs in here, they were physically shaken. Some of them were crying. Some of them refused to come back into the operation.
You know, if people want to relate to fear and intimidation, they only have to look into the eyes of these animals they don't know why they're being killed.
Rod Coronado is perhaps the most well-known member of the Animal Liberation Front. He claims to have rescued thousands of animals from fur farms and laboratories, and he served 4 years in prison for setting a fire at this Michigan State University research center. He says the type of device planted at Fulton Valley Farms sounds familiar.
The one that you refer to maybe is similar to the ones that I was convicted of using, and probably has a reputation in the movement as being an effective technique.
In fact, law enforcement sources tell us they found plans for an incendiary device on the ALF website that is very similar to the ones that failed to go off at the Fulton plant. Fires did cause damage at 2 Petaluma processors in January. A big rig burned on an egg farm, and offices and storage buildings at this veal plant suffered $250,000 damage. You can still see smoke on the walls.
The evidence left behind at each of these scenes is very similar. There are strong indications to us that the same people were responsible for all these acts.
Hey, hey! Whoa, whoa! This is torture chamber, it's got to go! Hey,
the owners of these plants are used to being the target of protesters who sometimes get quite creative. These people handcuffed their hands together inside heavy barrels of concrete and blocked the front gate at Rancho Veal. But arson is another matter, and farmers and processors throughout Sonoma County are feeling the heat.
They're angry that people are actually threatening them and their employees and their businesses, and they know it could happen to them too.
So now they are offering a $52,000 reward for the arrest of those responsible for the arson attacks.
These are cowardly acts, and who's ever out there has to understand that we're not going to sit by and let these occur without a response.
But finding those responsible may prove difficult. The ALF set a fire that caused $5 million damage at the UC Davis Animal Diagnostics Lab back in 1987. All these years have passed and no one has been arrested. That worries the more recent victims of arson attacks.
You know, they call it arson. Well, I feel it's not arson, it's terrorism, because they're trying to scare us into not processing, not doing something that they don't want us to do.
Should they be looking over their shoulders?
Damn right they should be looking over their shoulders. As long as anybody is making a profit from the exploitation and misery of animals, human, or the earth, yes, they better be watching over their backs.
But Rob Coronado says people have nothing to fear from the ALF, that its members respect all life, animal and human. He says no one has ever been hurt in an ALF raid.
And every time I hear the label that the ALF is violent, I think of the blood on people's hands. And I know that the ALF does not have a drop of it on its own.
Rob Coronado says he no longer carries out attacks on behalf of the ALF. But tonight at 11, we'll take you on a secret rendezvous with a man who says he does.
Well, I want people to know I'm not a violent person. I'm not a terrorist. I'm not a hateful person. That I act out of love. I act out of love for the animals.
And you'll be surprised to see what type of people are behind the masks and how the ALF is organized in its attacks to try and protect animals. That's tonight on ABC 7 News at 11 o'clock. Dan, Jessica.
Powerful stuff. We look forward to more. Thanks. Thank you, Dan.
Well,
Ground animal rights group is claiming responsibility for that attack.
we spoke with an active member of the Animal Liberation Front who says he goes on these raids all the time. Dan Noyes joins us with a special I-Team investigation.
Now, Jessica and Dan, we sent word out to the underground world of the ALF that we were pursuing a story. And then one day last week, a messenger from the group showed up here at ABC 7 and took us to a secret rendezvous with an active ALF volunteer. And we agreed to re-record this interview and use someone else's voice to prevent authorities from identifying the man.
The people I associate with have no idea what I do. My nighttime activities. I'm just a normal person like everyone else.
He won't tell us his name or where he lives, but this man says he's a member of an Animal Liberation Front cell in another part of the country. He provides important insight into the group that may be behind several recent attacks in the Bay Area.
I really just don't think the public has any clue about what kind of animal abuse is out there. I think if people could go behind those locked doors like I've done, look into the animal's eyes and see the incredible amount of suffering, I challenge anybody to see what I've seen and not do what I'm doing.
Just 3 days ago, a group claiming to be the ALF hit the Neiman Marcus in San Francisco. The store sells fur coats. They smashed dozens of windows and caused $100,000 damage. Arson was the tool for 3 other attacks in Sonoma County in recent weeks. $250,000 of damage to this slaughterhouse, a burned-out big rig at this egg farm. But the fire bombs placed throughout this chicken processing plant did not ignite.
You know, they call it arson. Well, I feel it's not arson, it's terrorism, because they're trying to scare us into not processing, not doing something that they don't want us to do.
No, I'm not a terrorist. Is a terrorist someone who breaks a window? Does the window hurt when a brick goes through it? I don't think so. But does a cow hurt when it's slaughtered? I think that's the terrorism. I think the people who abuse animals for money, for greed, those are the terrorists. And I consider my job to stop terrorism, to stop violence.
The FBI is working hard to stop the ALF, and authorities in Sonoma County are offering a $52,000 reward for arrests in the 3 arson attacks.
These are cowardly acts, and who's ever out there has to understand that we're not going to sit by and let these occur without a response.
What's cowardly? I think cowardly is torturing an innocent animal who can't defend itself, who has no ability, no voice in this world, and who is completely powerless. I think that's cowardly.
Authorities in Sonoma and San Francisco have a very difficult case on their hands. The ALF has been operating for 20 years with very few arrests. Take this fire, for example. The ALF torched the UC Davis Animal Diagnostics Lab, causing $5 million of damage. That was back in 1987. All these years have passed with no arrest.
The authorities are never going to stop us. As long as there's animal abuse, there's going to be people out there who aren't willing to tolerate it, who won't stand idly by while animals are tortured or murdered.
Now, this ALF member and others I've spoken to know it's impossible for them to stop the use of animals for food, clothing, or research. It's too much a part of our everyday lives. But they say their short-term goal is to get all of us to just stop for a moment and think about the issues. Dan, Jessica?
They certainly are. Thank you very much, Dan.
Sure. Thank you, Dan. All right, let's